Hi artists, it's Miss Lee. Today we are continuing our unit of looking at our world. Our objectives are learn about artworks. You will understand that art is a way for people to experience and respond to beauty. We're going to learn how artists communicate. We're going to look at ways that artists record how things appear to them. And we're going to experience the theme, looking at our world, as artists. You're going to be thinking and working as artists, and you're going to observe and record what you see. Experience the theme as viewers of art. We're going to see that as perceivers, the people who are looking at art, that we can consider different ways artists organize their artworks to create. I made a little change for the concepts that we're going to focus on this week. Yesterday we talked about sketches and we did a sketch of our hand. Today we're going to talk about models, poses, and proportions. Tomorrow we'll do an artist study about Jean-Michel Basquiat, and we'll draw a portrait inspired by that artist. And then the changes on Friday, we will do some gesture drawings rather than reviewing our color wheel. I will save the color wheel and color theory for next week. So today's lesson is seeing people. Many artists practice drawing people. Edgar De Gaulle is an artist who painted dancers. He often asked the dancers to pose so that he could sketch them. A person who poses for an artist is called a model. So here is, on one side we see Edgar De Gaulle's sketch, and on the other side we see his final artwork, which is actually a sculpture. Edgar De Gaulle made many sketches of models in different poses before he created the sculpture. So how are the poses in the sketches similar to that of the finished sculpture? Can you see? We see that he really studied all angles of that dancer from different viewpoints. So we already learned a few new words. We learned pose, which is when you stand in one position, and we learned model, which is a person who poses for an artist. Now, another word that I want you to remember for art is proportion. Proportion shows how parts are related to each other. So, for example, the hips of a person are about halfway between the feet and the top of the head. When we draw someone who is in proportion, we draw someone who's about 7 heads tall. So this figure right here, her head is going to be the measurement for the rest of the body. And I'm going to walk you through how to draw a figure or a person in proportion. And you're going to follow along, and then you're going to share your drawing with me on Seesaw. All right, so get out your paper and you're going to follow along as I draw a figure in proportion. So that means that all the parts are related to each other and they're about the right size and they go in the right place, okay? So I'm going to start my figure by drawing an oval shape for the head. This size for the head is going to determine the size for the rest of the body. So if you have a really big head, you might need a lot more paper. I'm just going to start with the smaller head and then give myself enough room for about 7 heads. So if I just really lightly draw about 7 heads, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's going to be how tall my person's going to be if they are in proportion. Okay, I'm going to keep those lightly drawn heads there. I don't know if you can see it that well from the camera. I'll darken it a little bit, but I'll eventually erase them. Okay, so each part of these heads represents parts of the body. So the neck and the shoulders are going to be right below my head, and I'm going to draw it a little bit wider than my head. Okay, so you should be following along and sketching your own on your paper. Okay, this is going to be like the chest area of my figure, and this will be their waist. Okay, so the chest and the shoulders are a little bit wider, and then we have our middle part, or where our tummies are. Okay, so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So where the 4 is, that's close to the middle, about 3.5 maybe, was closer to the middle. But that's where my hips are going to go. And for my person, I'm going to draw a big circle to represent the hips. Okay? And then, of course, from our hips, that's where our legs will come out from. So I'm just going to draw 2 rectangular shapes coming out from that circle that represents the hips. Okay? Now, down here is where my legs will be. If you want, you can also draw circles to represent where all the joints are. So that's where my knees are. And then I can draw my shins coming down from there. And then, of course, your feet. Okay. Now, my person needs some arms, so I'm going to draw these circles to represent the shoulder joints. And my arms, my elbows usually come to right where my waist is. So actually I'm going to darken that area. And then forearms, and then my hands. So if you stand up and see where your hands hit, it should hit right where your thighs are, okay? Where your thighs are. All right, so there's my basic figure. Once I've drawn my figure, I can go in and add some details now to make it look like a person or a character. So I'll fast forward this part, but you will refine and shape your character or your figure to the way you want it. And sometimes you might need a model to stand up so you can look at them. This is just a generalized view. Alright, so there's my figure. It's about 7 heads high. And I can color it in now. I can write a story about him, or I can draw another person, and keep practicing drawing your figures in proportion. Make sure you take a picture of what you have drawn and share it with me on Seesaw.